Okay, so this is my attempt at a supplementary video for Sunday school. So this is hopefully showing up in between Genesis chapter 4 and Genesis chapter 5, because in Genesis chapter 5 we're looking at genealogies, and I'm going to mention some other genealogies, and that when we look at Jewish genealogies in Scripture, probably any of them actually, but especially the Jewish ones, Jewish genealogies, the authors of Jewish genealogies, are not using these genealogies first and foremost to communicate to us historical information. They are doing that, but theological truth is more important to them in genealogies than historical truth. We talked about this in Sunday school before. Chris has talked about it in the main service, in the genealogy of Christ. But in case you missed any of that, you wanted a refresher, we're going to talk about it here. Let me know if you want me to continue to do supplementary stuff like this to kind of help out Sunday school and that kind of stuff, so we're not repeat teaching a lot. So I have up here the genealogies of Jesus Christ as it is given in Matthew chapter 1. You can read it in Matthew chapter 1, starting right in verse 1, where it says, the book of genealogies of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. And then verse 2, he's going to start with Abraham, and he's going to go all the way in that first paragraph. He's going to go down to David, and then in the next paragraph he's going to go from Solomon all the way down to Jeconiah, and then in the next paragraph we're going to do Shealtiel all the way to Jesus. And then in verse 17, Matthew's going to tell us that so all the generations from Abraham to David were 14 generations, and then from David to the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations. Jeconiah was a king around then. And from the deportation to Babylon to Christ, 14 generations, right here. And if we go and just walk through this, I'm having a bad eye day. So if we start here, we got Abraham, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Indeed. I know there's a big glare like right here. I saw in the test video, and there's a big glare up here. I'm going to do my best to work on that in the future, but I didn't want to redo my board. Sorry. So that's Abraham, Shealtiel, Zerubbabel. All right, then right here, Solomon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 generations indeed. And then Shealtiel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 generations. And so already we notice that things are a little wonky with Matthew's genealogy here. In order for there to be 14 generations from the exile to Christ, Jeconiah actually has to be counted as part of both chunks, both the David to the exile chunk and exile to Christ chunk, which, again, that's not the case here with David. David belongs in this first chunk of 14 when we count it. He does not belong in this chunk of 14, unless Jehoiakim starts over there, which you can make that argument, in which case we have to count David twice. All right, so either way, somebody's got to end up getting counted twice. And when we take Matthew's genealogy and we go back to the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and 1st and 2nd Chronicles, which are the story of David. He becomes king in 2nd Samuel. His story is in 1st Samuel. It starts there, but he doesn't get king there. And then Rehoboam becomes king, I believe, in 1st Kings. And then it rolls through 1st Kings, 2nd Kings, and then David, 1st Chronicles. It's all the way through there. If we look at those accounts, and we look at the stories, we find out that Matthew, not only is he counting either Jehoiakim twice, or Jeconiah twice, or David twice, but in order to get this chunk of 14, he actually skips over 4 kings. All right, so there is a chunk of kings here in between Joram and Uzziah by the names of Ahaziah, Joash, and Amaziah, who is the father of Uzziah. And there's actually a sort of a skip right here with Jehoiakim. Actually, there's quite a bit more going on right there. So this is a big glare right here. I apologize. So we have Josiah from that list. Josiah actually had 3 sons of note. The first is Jehoahaz, who is also in the Old Testament given the name Jehohanan. You can't see this because of the big glare, but you'll take my word for it and you can check it out on your own. He actually succeeded Josiah as king, which is not reflected in the Matthew genealogy. Matthew has Jeconiah, which is his name in Chronicles. In Kings, he is Jehoiachin. He is the son of Jehoiakim, who we said got skipped. Okay? But his name was originally Elikiah. After Josiah died and Jehoahaz became king, Pharaoh of Egypt came and put Judah under vassalship and took this guy into exile, and then took Elikim, his brother, renamed him Jehoiakim, who Matthew skipped, and makes him king. Jehoiakim's son, Jehoiachin, Chin, who is also known by the name Jeconiah, which is the name that Matthew uses, he dies. These are all wicked kings, by the way. And his son, Jehoiachin, becomes king. Nebuchadnezzar comes and carts him off into Babylonian exile, and then takes his uncle Mattaniah, renames him Zedekiah. And then this guy actually ends up rebelling, and Nebuchadnezzar is going to come in, wipe him out, and then put some totally unrelated guy in charge. So Matthew, not only, he skips this whole generation of these 3 brothers, who at one point all become king. Zedekiah becoming king after Jeconiah, seceding from his father Jehoiakim, who Matthew skips, who was the brother of Jehoahaz, who was the first king after Josiah. So not only does Matthew kind of skip this generation, I guess you could say, he also avoids the entire mess of before Jeconiah and after Jeconiah in his genealogy. We'll come back to this side of the board in a little bit. Now, okay, so again, Matthew sacrifices historical accuracy in his genealogy. Why? Well, because he wants to have this 14-14-14 pattern, which, again, we'll see this on Sunday school. Hebrew genealogists, they love to have these reoccurring patterns in genealogy within the history. And probably specifically 14, because 14 as a number was associated with David. David's number, according to the numbering traditions of that time, was 14. And David, if you read the text of the genealogy, and everybody who's repeated, like at the beginning and the ends, David is mentioned more than anybody else. And Matthew, his book is all about Jesus being the Messiah, the son of David. And so he crafts a genealogy to express that theological point in a very wonderfully Hebrew way. And so he skips some names, and then he does this double counting thing so that we can get the number 14. So we can get 14 3 times, again, 3 being a very significant number, and then 14 being associated with David. And this is stuff that conservative biblical scholarship has known forever, talked about forever. You've probably heard it in a sermon before. If you've been here for a while, you have, because Chris talked about it. I've talked about in Sunday school before. So this is just one of the easiest genealogies to be able to examine this because it's so well known and it's so easy to kind of look at it. In fact, there's even, when you dig a little bit deeper, there's even a few other things that are going on here. When you look at the genealogy in Luke, which probably is talking about Mary's genealogy, and Mary didn't have any brothers, and so Joseph became the heir of his father-in-law as well. We can follow Mary's genealogy all the way back to Adam, and in there we also find out that Jesus is descended from David on his mother's side as well. Not through Solomon, but through one of Solomon's brothers, Nahshon, who was a son of David, also by Bathsheba, who bore Solomon, and that there may even be an overlap at Shealtiel and Zerubbabel, so they may have two common ancestors. If you look at Matthew's genealogy from David, again, to Christ, you get 28 generations, with skips and stuff, all right? If you go to Luke and look at the genealogy there and follow from Nahshon, again, who's Solomon's brother, all the way to Christ, you get 43 generations. So it's a pretty significant difference between the generations in one genealogy and the comparable generations in another genealogy. And so, I mean, again, there's probably some skips in here. And in all probably on this side, there's probably some skips in between the time of the exiles and Christ himself. So in here, Matthew probably skips some as well in order to make his point. So, there you go. If you have any questions about that, leave them in the comments or catch me on Sunday. All right. Now, this is not the only time that we see this in Scripture. Okay, this is just the one that is most well known and there's the most information out there. You've probably heard teachings on it before. A couple other that you may not have heard teachings on. I want to look at two more. Actually, I want to peek and make sure the recording's still going. Yeah, we're cruising. Are we? Yeah, okay. So let me flip my board. All right. Let's look at the genealogy of David in the book of Ruth. This is in the last paragraph of the last chapter of Ruth. In fact, this genealogy we are going to talk about on Sunday. So if you're watching this after that, we did talk about this one a little bit, so it may be a little bit of a review. But this is the genealogy that is given at the end of Ruth, and it's the genealogy of David, and it starts with Perez, okay, and then it runs down through David. All right, why am I bringing this genealogy up? Okay, so Perez is the child of Judah through his inadvertent levirate marriage. Okay. And we know from the book of Genesis that Hezron was actually alive when Isaac's family, when Jacob's family go to Egypt. You probably can't see any of this because of the glare. Okay? They were part of the 70 people that go down. You can read about this in the end of Genesis. All right? Ram was not born at that point. So Ram was born when they were down in Egypt. Okay. So when we look at our biblical history, Nahshon is the prince of Judah mentioned at the beginning of the book of Numbers, like chapter 1 or chapter 2, that he's the guy that's like representing Judah. Okay? He came out during the Exodus, which means he was part of the generation that dies before they go into the conquest of Canaan. So he comes out of Egypt, but does not go into Canaan. In between here, Ram is born. Nahshon is at least 20 years old. We don't know. There's 430 years. The Israelites were in Egypt for 430 years. And that is represented across these three generations. And we're going to see in another genealogy a little bit later that the corresponding generations here in Levi's family, they were living somewhere in the hundreds to 140s. So there's missing generations in here. All right. And then this guy right here, Solomon, he was a contemporary of Joshua. He was part of Israel when they go in. In fact, we find out from Matthew's genealogy, I think, that this guy marries Rahab. So he's right at the beginning. Okay, Boaz, all we know about Boaz is he is during the time of the judges. All right. We're assuming near the end because, again, we have Obed, Jesse, David. David is a young man at the time of Saul, who was king after Samuel was judge, and Samuel was the last judge near the end. So we assume that Boaz is near the end. And why I'm bringing this up is because in the book of Judges, and you can read about this, one of the judges near the end of the book is by the name of Jephthah. And in Judges chapter 11, Jephthah is conversing with the king of the Ammonites. And Jephthah tells the king of the Ammonites that they have been in the land for 300 years. So somewhere in between here and before the end of the time of the judges, so somewhere in here probably, we have 300 years. Probably more so right here. And so again, like, we definitely have some skip generations here, and we definitely have some skip generations here because of time frame references that are actually given to us within the scripture. All right, and then to take it back to here, let's one more, and this is in Exodus chapter 6. And in Exodus chapter 6, we get the genealogy of Moses. And I bring this one up because this starts in Genesis chapter 6:14. But it's going to tell us in here, you go read it, that, so you have Levi. And Levi was the brother of Judah. And we're actually given his age, that he lived 137 years. He has 3 sons. The one that we are worrying about here is Kohath, who lives 133 years. These were both part of the 70 people that go down at the end of the book of Genesis. All right. Kohath, according to Exodus chapter 6, has a kid named Amram, who was 137, who married his aunt, Kohath's sister, and had Aaron and Moses. Again, Kohath is part of the 70 that go down here. And so in between here and here, 430 years. Actually, not quite, because some of that Moses and Aaron are alive. So definitely skip generations. Let's, even assuming that Kohath was born the same year they go down, that doesn't even account for 300 of those years. So definitely some skips, based solely upon these time frame references that are specifically given to us in Scripture. So the fact that the genealogies within Scripture are sometimes use things like skip generations and interesting counting, and as you're going to look in Sunday school, you check out the Sunday school video, there may even be some more things. Because again, yes, is there a historical fact in here? Yes. There's some descendants missing, but they're there. But it's the theological truths that are more important. We need to know that Aaron and Moses are descendants of Levi. Okay, David is a descendant of Nahshon, who is the prince of Judah, who is a descendant of Perez, who was the heir to Judah. And Judah, as we'll look at when we get into our studies of Genesis, inherited the patriarchal responsibilities of Jacob, who was the child Isaac, who was the child of Abraham, who was really important, okay? And so David needs to get connected to Judah, gets connected to Abraham, okay? And we'll explain, I think, some of the reasons why the skips are here in the My Sunday School video. Okay, so that is a discussion, a quick kind of overview of genealogies and skipping generations and that kind of stuff. So I hope that is helpful. If that was helpful, please let me know. If this is the kind of thing that would be helpful, if I did more of, please let me know. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comments, or you can catch me on some random Sunday, or if you're watching this, you probably know how to get in touch with me. So thank you for watching. Goodbye.